Join. It is time for our interview. We have a very special guest with me for tonight, so hopefully you all will sit back, relax, and enjoy this time. If you don't know me, my name is Nakedra Brown. I am the nurse practitioner who teaches and trains you ways to get and stay healthy. I do this thing called Tip Tuesdays on Tuesdays, where I give you education and motivation to help elevate you to your next level of health. I normally do that at 1:35. And then as a spinoff of that, I have been doing interviews with people who are who have some affinity to the topic in which I've discussed. So this week, our topic is National Donate Life Month. And so we're going to be talking to Deon Brown. So she is here in Wait. I have to give you just a little bit of background just about National Donate Life Month. If you are watching, make sure you say hello in the comments so that we can see who is here. If you catch this on replay, hashtag replay, let us know where you're tuning in from so that we can go in and properly greet you. So as stated, this is National Donate Life Month. This is April. And so we know that organ donation is a life-saving procedure in which an organ is transferred from one area of a person's body to another area, or from one person to another person. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Can anybody guess what the most commonly transplanted organs are? A guess to what the most commonly transplanted organs are. You know, we only have so many organs in the body, right? So what do you think the most commonly transplanted organs are? Kidney would be one, liver, heart, lungs, pancreas, and then maybe something that you really hadn't thought of would be the intestines. And so we're going to talk about just about how this affects minorities, because I always want to give y'all education and help you understand, and particularly in minority communities, how we can affect change. So on any given day, there are about 100,000 people on the active waiting list for organs. You hear that? On any given day, there are about 100,000 people who are on the active waiting list for organs. If you are so inclined and you know anybody who is on the waiting list for an organ, you can put what organ they are on the waiting list for, just to kind of show if the statistics hold true. But we're going to talk about how African Americans make up the largest group of minorities who are in need of organs. So it is definitely a conversation that we don't discuss a whole lot. We're going to talk about some myths as it relates to African American and minorities and donor status. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit more just about some statistics. In 2021, 81.3% of organ donors from non-Hispanic Blacks were from deceased donors. So that means that for those who donated from Blacks, they were actually deceased. And so we're going to talk to Deon to see how in 1 year, she actually changed that statistic. So I'm going to allow Deon now to introduce herself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, all that good stuff.
Hello, my name is Deon Brown. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I live here in North Carolina now. I've been here 16 years now. So I guess I should be saying I'm from North Carolina, but I probably won't. A little bit about myself. I have an older sister, about 6 years older than me. And she was in need of a kidney. Or do you want me to go that far now or no?
You can go.
Okay. But yeah, she was in need of a kidney, and I was blessed enough to be one of her donors in her journey.
So what, have you always been a supporter of organ donation, or when were you first introduced with that concept? Was it when your sister needed a kidney, or talk to us kind of about that whole process?
So I was probably 10 I was younger than that when she first got sick. And she's had a kidney disease growing up, and my mother was her first donor. So that is kind of how I knew about donation. Of course, I didn't know the whole aspect of it. I just knew that we had a whole lot of doctor appointments. We were in and out of Children's Hospital up in Milwaukee a lot. They gave me apple juice all the time, so I was, excited about that. She did home dialysis for a while, so I knew of kind of the process because I would sometimes help, scrubbing in and hooking the bags up and all the tubes. So I knew of that part. And so she was well for a while. And I think, I don't know if she's on yet, but she can correct me. I think it's about her 15th year anniversary. We had actually went to the beach, the aquarium, to celebrate. And I would say maybe 4 or 5 months later, she got sick again and had to restart dialysis and was in need of another kidney. And so before that, sorry. So since I knew of that life when I moved here and I got my license here, I automatically signed up for being a organ donor if something should happen to me. And I never thought I would have to do it as a living person, but here I am. But yeah, she got sick again, and my father got tested. He was not a good match. Of course, my mother had already gave her kidney away, so she couldn't give her last one away. And I think her husband got tested. He wasn't a good match. And I mean, it wasn't a question that I would not get tested. It was, sure, I'm going to get tested. She had 2 small kids at the time. Who's going to help her raise them kids? Something happened. So I want her to be here for the kids and of course be here for us as well. So I got tested. There were a lot of tests to go through, not just blood tests, but they make you talk to a psychologist. They just do a lot of interviews. By that time, she had moved back to Milwaukee to talk to her, former doctors and things of that nature. So they had deemed her not able to come back to North Carolina because we thought we were going to do it here at UNC. But she had to stay up there. So we were kind of doing her testing up there, my testing out here,
Right.
sending vials back and forth. And they deemed me viable candidate for it. It was 13 years ago. So I was 26. So I was still fairly young. Is that right? Yeah. And I was still fairly young, and of course they, have questions about your health and what do you see things happening in your future for you. I was without children, still without children. So they wanted to make sure that I knew what was, my risk of that nature. And none of that mattered to me. I mean, it was my sister, and I was going to do it regardless.
So let's talk really quickly about, I heard you say when you moved to North Carolina that you had the indicator placed on your license. If for people who have no idea where to start, what would be their first start in terms of how to signify that they would like to become an organ donor?
I think it was just a box I checked when I did my license, when I moved here. I didn't do it when I was in Wisconsin because I still had my young, straight first license. So I don't think I was old enough to do it at that time. So by the time I moved here, I was 22. And of course, full adult, can make my own choices. But I believe I just checked the box right along with them asking me what my political affiliation was, all at the same time.
Right, and so that indicator can be placed on your license so that people are able to see if you are a organ donor. I always ask that people have the conversation also with your family because obviously if you are not in a capacity to be able to speak for yourself because you're deceased, we just said that 81.3% of organ donors from Blacks are from deceased donors. Nobody wants to think about it, I know. But if you aren't able to speak, that would be an indication to your family, or you would have had the conversation with your family so that they would be able to know your wishes. So if you are just tuning in, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are having a conversation with Deon Brown tonight. And it is by coincidence that our last name is Brown. We are not technically related, although we are sisters in some regard, but yes, same last name, so I'll call her namesake. And it is National Donate Life Month, so we're having a conversation about how she, at age 26, became a donor for her sister, donated a kidney, and we did just say that kidney is one of the most transplanted organs in this country. So we just wanted to have a conversation just to break down some of the myths and to let people ask questions if you have any just about organ donation, because African Americans and minorities are among those who need organs, but there are very few. I said that at any given time, about 100,000 people are on the waiting list for an organ. In regards to kidneys, about 97,000 people need kidneys or on the waiting list for kidneys. And the transplant rate for Blacks are 30,000 and for non-Hispanic whites are 34,000. So you can see kind of where that stratifies in terms of race. Transplant performed in the United States. So for African Americans, 9,252 transplants were performed in 2021, as opposed to white Americans, 21,355 transplants were performed in the United States. So you can see the big gap by way of who has been donated organs. And why do you think that's so, Deon? Why do you think there is a gap in between the races in terms of transplants and organs?
I think it's being scared.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people I know that that you have a conversation with them, like, I want to be buried with all my stuff. Why? You can't do nothing with it. You can't do nothing with it. Or I've heard people say, well, if I get a car accident, they just gonna take my stuff. It doesn't work just like that.
Not
But I mean, I think it's just scared. And or they just don't know anybody that close to them that actually needs that organ. Like once it hits family, I think people's minds start changing a little bit different.
So I think some of the stereotypes that I have heard is that people will say, like you said, I want to be buried with all of my stuff. I came here with it. I want to leave with it, is one thing. And then people just don't know enough about it, don't know enough to know that you can live without certain organs. Deon, what do you say? You're 13 years? How many years out are you? 13 years. She's given one of her kidneys to her sister. For those who need a little anatomic information, we have two kidneys, right? So we can live with just one. So she has given her one of her two kidneys to her sister, and her sister is thriving. She said that was her sister's second transplant. The first came from her mother. And so in this family, I would think that the conversation is one that you were always around, because you knew pretty much for the most part of your life that what your mom had done for your sister. But again, it doesn't hit home until we have somebody who needs organs, until we know somebody who is at risk for failing. And then we think about them not being here. And then we want to see if we're on the transplant list or add ourselves to the transplant list. So let's talk about mindset for a minute. Because I heard you say that there was conversation just about you had to go through a bunch of testing, and some of that does kind of make sure that you are mentally prepared to go through this type of operation. So as you talk to us about the mindset, also tell us about just the process, about how long was the hospital stay for you, the recovery, things of that nature.
So the mindset, like I said, it was no question that I was going to do it. Matter of fact, I actually got into it with my primary doctor at the time, because my sister's insurance was going to pay for it, but I had to, of course, do it here. And she was more concerned about how she was going to get paid with these labs. And I was like, ma'am, I gives no cares of how you get your money, but what you gonna do is take these labs so I can go save my sister's life.
Right.
You figure out the fees later. But so besides that little hiccup,
The way that's the transition of healthcare, right? All about that dollar.
besides that hiccup, I didn't have any others. I did the little psych eval, I guess it is, over the phone. Did all my labs here in North Carolina. Then I had to I went up there a week before my surgery for us to have a pre-op. And that's when they discussed what type of procedure they would do on me. They thought they would do the laparoscopic, where they just, make a small incision and get it on out. And after they did some testing and x-rays and all that stuff, they realized that one of my ribs were in the way. So they were going to have to do the traditional one where they basically cut your side open and stitch you back up. And they just asked me, "Are you okay with that? You okay? It's going to be a scar." And I'm like, "Okay, no problem." I mean, of course, I would have not wanted a scar, but again, it is what it is. So we had the surgery. They gave me an epidural. Since I don't have kids, I've only seen them on TV. And of course, when they see, you see it on TV, there's a lot of people there supporting you, you hovering over a pillow. In my experience, there was nobody else in there to help me support. So I'm like, this lady's about to stick this needle all the way through my back. So that probably was the scariest part of it. Then they took me to the room, the prep room or whatever, waited there. My sister came in a little bit afterwards. She was on some good drugs and was not able to communicate with me that much, but that was it. I came back out of surgery, and I feel like I came to fairly quickly, and I was trying to talk, and of course they had me with the tubes and stuff down my throat, so they took the tubes out. And my first question was, "Where's my sister? Like, where is she?" And so probably like hour later, she was wheeled back in there with me. And again, she was knocked out cold. I got to my room, I would say maybe 2 hours later. They had me up walking around.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't in my bed long. Of course, I had the epidural, so that was my only pain medication. It was a slow drip, I believe, and I only had to push it maybe once or twice my whole stay there. There was not much pain. They kept us in separate rooms, so we would have to walk to each other to get the exercise in.
Oh, that's nice.
So we did. I walked to her first. Her medicine was not there, so she was in a lot of pain. But we just visited back and forth. We stayed in the hospital 5 days, I think, and then we went home. Went back to my mom's house for our aftercare or whatever. I probably could have went back to work in 2 weeks, but I stayed out the whole month just because I know I could. Only restrictions were not to lift things. And what did we do? We was playing with my niece and nephew at the park. Shouldn't have been doing that. Not to do a lot of up and down movements. And what was I doing? Jumping in and out of trucks and busting my stitches. So I had to go back and get my stitches fixed. But other than that, I didn't have any complications. Only thing they told me that I shouldn't do after the surgery was take like ibuprofens and aspirins. Only thing they wanted me to take was like a Tylenol situation. And I'm not a big drinker anyway, and limiting my drinking. Those were like the only two things that they said to do with my one kidney.
And let's be clear that even from that date until this date, you had any adverse complications or?
No. I get my cholesterol checked every year. In the beginning, they wanted me to get my creatinine levels checked. Make sure that I get my blood pressure checked every once in a while. But no, I haven't had any issues. One of the things that, of course, they, ask you if you have any questions. At that point in time, I was asking if would it be any problems with having children. They said no. I also asked if something happened to me with my one kidney left, what would happen? And at that point in time, hopefully it's still true, that my name will be pushed up higher on the list since I was the actual donor of a kidney prior. So I wouldn't have to wait as long to receive a kidney if something else happened to me. But thankfully, nothing has happened. I would say, I think it's 2 or 3 years now that my sister has been fully off of all her medications, so she's fine. Doesn't have any complications. They actually, looking at our blood work and all our testing and stuff, they said it looked like we were actually twins. That's how close of a match we were.
Wow.
But she is doing awesome.
Well, that is good to hear. And I think I see a comment that says, one of the myths when we were talking, somebody says, people think if you're a donor, then the medical staff won't try to save you. So, if you are indicated that you are a donor, the thought may be that the medical staff or those who are caring for you won't give you the level of care because they're just trying to get your organ, which is absolutely not true. Saying that from the perspective of a healthcare provider, not true. You will get the same level of care, but I can understand how people would think that. There's a question about, do you have a special diet? Now, Dion has a special diet anyway. Just to know Dion is to know she has a special diet anyway, but I'll let her answer.
No, I don't have a special diet pertaining to giving away a kidney. No, my first meal after giving away my kidney, full meal, because they don't let you eat right away. I had to eat popsicles and broth that tastes just like salt. But my first meal was if you're from Wisconsin or that area, it's a place called Cousins, which is a sub place. And I'm not gonna say it's like Subway because it's a whole lot better than Subway, but called Cousins, and that was my first meal, and it was delicious. But no, I had no dietary restrictions after donating.
Well, if you are just tuning in, we're talking to Dion since it is National Donate Life Month. So this is the month where we try to raise awareness about becoming organ donors, understanding what it means, having a conversation with your family and friends, really thinking about what you would do if it's you or someone you love. Now, I will say from a personal perspective, I have been an organ donor and indicated that for some time. I have not personally donated an organ, but I have
Oh,
indicated
I
that
was like,
I
what?
that I would donate an organ. And I remember having the conversation with my mother. At the time, I was not married, I didn't have any children. And she was like, well, if it's up to me, I'm not gonna donate your organs. And I was like, what do you mean if it's up to you? Because it technically will be up to you, you know, because I won't be here. But it was just shocking that, and I think that's the first time that I had ever heard somebody really think in the opposite of how I thought in terms of organ donation. And she was like, I would not. And I was like, but it's gonna be indicated, like it's right here. You know what I want? And she was like, I'm just letting you know, I'm letting you know if it's up to me, you know, I'm not gonna let them donate your organs. So I will say that it is a conversation worth having. For those of you who also know me personally, you know that my father passed away a couple of years ago from a myasthenia gravis crisis. And at the end of that crisis, he was actually in the ICU for several days. And at the time I had the conversation, at the point by which we knew what the outcome was going to be, I started the conversation around what are we going to do with his organs? Because, you know, there are things that can be donated. There are things that I felt like somebody else might be able to use. But there is a process by which the hospital goes through to determine whether or not the organs are viable. So for the one who talked about the myth, they're not just gonna come in when somebody passes away and be like, oh, here's some eyes, here's a heart, here's some kidneys. They don't do that. They really, really look at, you know, the person in terms of their past medical history, the viability of the organs, and things of that nature. So there's a really, really stringent process by which, just like Dion went through a process as a live donor, there's a process that you go through if you are a deceased donor. There is still a process. So just know you should have you should have the discussion with your family, especially if they aren't able to make it. But the hospital, and there is a whole organ procurement section of the hospital. That's what they do. So they're able to tell you whether or not the organs can be donated. In my father's case, he was not deemed to be an organ donor. And so, and I know my mom was happy, right? So we're in this mix of, you know, these all emotions, and, you know, we're already in the ICU standing and talking about, you know, what are we going to do, and so on and so forth. And I knew that she didn't want to discuss organ donation at that particular time because she knew how I felt, right? And I knew how she felt. So when the lady came back and she was like, you know, for whatever reasons, X, Y, and Z, we're not going to be able. And I was still pushing. I was like, what about his heart? You know, his heart is strong, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, ma'am, ma'am. I was like, I get it. But it's really a conversation that we kind of avoided. Admittedly, we kind of avoided because we knew the positions that we both had. And in the end, it worked itself out because he ended up not being able to donate. But I would still say that's a conversation that you should definitely have with people in your family, so that you don't have those uneasy moments at the bedside or in the ICU around that situation or that conversation. So just my 2 cents. It is almost time for us to close. I don't want to keep you too long, but if you have any parting words for those who are watching, feel free. And if you are watching, please, please, please make sure you say hello in the comments, #replay if you're watching on replay. We've enjoyed our conversation with you tonight. Really wanted Dion to come, let people understand that organ donation is something that we are in need of. We, being the minority community, we don't talk about it enough. We aren't the face, if I have to say that, we aren't the face of organ donation. So when you see the videos, you read the pamphlets, you look at those, you don't see our faces because we are underrepresented, as we are in most cases. So Dion, parting words.
I would just say, really consider it. I've had, outside of my sister, recently, I've had a cousin who unfortunately passed away, received 2 lungs. that wasn't the reason why she passed away, but she received 2 lungs prior to her passing. And unfortunately, within that same week of her passing, another cousin passed and his mother decided to donate his organs, and he was able to save, I think, like 4, or not save, but his organs got donated to at least like 4 families.
Right.
So I would just say, think about it. If you have questions, I always tell my friends if they have questions or they know somebody who, might need some, background or encouragement, who has somebody in their family that might need a kidney and they're thinking about, do I want to be a kidney donor? I've had plenty of conversations with people that I know and don't know about it. But you should consider it. As my sister would say, share your spare. You only need one to survive. And that's how I found out my blood type was O positive, which is, the ultimate giver.
It is. You were born to give.
That's what I say every year. I
You're
was born to give.
give.
And I would do it again if I had my other one back. I wouldn't change anything about it.
I have to say that I see your mom, Diane Brown. So she is hopping on, just let you know she's watching. And
Hey, Mommy.
you're absolutely correct. It's been 27 years since she donated her kidney. And she's had no complications to date. So thank you, Miss Diane, for watching. Thank you for changing the face of organ donation as well. So I know you started this whole cycle, at least in Dion's family, by making it commonplace, a common conversation. It's the thing that she had no hesitation about when given the choice. So appreciate you as well. We have another comment that says they're an organ donor and she gives blood regularly. So giving blood is also the gift of life to others. And she thanks you for your selfless gift and for sharing your story.
Thank you.
So if we have no further questions, I am going to thank Dion for coming on, doing this interview with me tonight. I hope this gives people an opportunity to put a face with organ donation. Not to just think that it is a sentence that you don't want. She's talked about 13 years. She's living well, she's thriving, and no side effects. Her sister is doing well. And so what more could you ask for than to be able to give the gift of life to someone else that you love? So what greater love could you do but to make sure that you take care of the ones that you love? So thank you all for watching. And we will see you next time. Y'all have a good night.
Good night.